Okay, so we have here a list of all of the domains and kingdoms and a whole bunch of characteristics. And we're going to talk about the different cell types, the domains within those cell types, the kingdoms within those domains. And down here in the characteristics, this is all blank, but we are going to fill this in with, we're going to put a check for everything that is present in each of these kingdoms. Okay, so if the cell membrane is present in these kingdoms, we'll put an X in every kingdom that you will find a cell membrane in. And we're going to have this whole entire table complete. We're going to answer a few questions. And so the goal of this video obviously is to learn the characteristics of each of the kingdoms and what each kingdom has and why different cell types are in different kingdoms. It's all based on what they have. So we're gonna get more to that later, but let's start off with cell membrane. So first of all cells have a cell membrane. So I'm just going to put an X in all of the boxes that have a cell membrane. So first of all, there's two types of cells. There are prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Remember, pro means no nucleus, and euc means nuke. We talked about this in a different one. So eukaryotic cells have a nucleus, prokaryotic cells do not. Within the prokaryotic cell types, there are two domains that are prokaryotic. They are bacteria and archaea. And in eukaryotic cells, there's only one domain, eukarya. So there's three domains, bacteria, archaea, eukarya. And within each domain, you have kingdoms within each domain. And in the domain bacteria, you only have one kingdom, and it's eubacteria. In the archaea domain, again, only one kingdom, archaea bacteria. And in the eukarya domain, however, you have four kingdoms, plants, animals, fungi, protists, for a total of 6 kingdoms. All 6 kingdoms, all cells in all 6 kingdoms have a cell membrane. Now, a cell wall, remember what a cell wall is. A cell wall is like an additional layer on top of the cell membrane. Not all cell types have the cell wall. Bacteria have cell wall, both of them do, the eubacteria and the archaea bacteria. Plants have a cell wall, animals do not have a cell wall, and fungi have a cell wall, but protists do not have a cell wall. Okay, so a big difference between these over here and these over here is, or what I should say, between the eubacteria and the archaea bacteria. So they both have a cell wall and they're both prokaryotes, but what's different between these two is that their cell wall is made up of different stuff, and that's really the only difference. This cell wall is made up of this stuff called peptidoglycan. I'm actually going to write number 1 over here because it's too big to write over there. Peptidoglycan is what's in this cell wall. And archaea bacteria have cell walls that are just made up of proteins and lipids. Okay. Plant cell walls are made up of the stuff called cellulose. It's C-E-L-L-U-L-O-S-E. I'm just going to put cell there for now, but that's how you spell cellulose. Animals do not have a cell wall, so I'm going to leave it blank. Fungi have a cell wall. It's made up of chitin, C-H-I-T-I-N. And protists do not have a cell wall. Okay. DNA, guess what? All cells have DNA. DNA is absolutely necessary for life. Nucleus. Remember, pro means no. Prokaryotic cells do not have a nucleus. So everything under prokaryotic, which is bacteria and archaea, are not going to have a nucleus. And everything in the eukaryotics is going to have a nucleus. So all 4 of these are going to have a nucleus. A nucleoid region, what's that? Well, a nucleoid region is just a place where the DNA happens to be. So these prokaryotes, see, they have DNA, but they don't have a nucleus, and that's typically where you find the DNA. But in prokaryotes, they don't have a nucleus, so the DNA just kind of floats around in what we call the nucleoid region. It's just an area where the DNA tends to hang out at. So this is kind of a substitute for a nucleus. And of course, because these guys have a nucleus, the DNA is not just freely floating around the cell, so there is no nucleoid region. Okay. Cytoplasm. Again, all cells have cytoplasm. If a cell is like a water balloon, the rubber part is like the cell membrane, and the water inside is like the cytoplasm. It's just like this liquid medium inside the cell that fills in all the empty spaces. Okay, so all cells have it. Membrane-bound organelles. This is another pro means no, euc means nuke thing. So pro means no, it means no nucleus, but also means no membrane-bound organelles. So both of these prokaryotics, Bacteria and Archaea, neither one are going to have membrane-bound organelles. That's a eukaryotic thing only, okay? So all eukaryotes have membrane-bound organelles. Prokaryotes do not. Mitochondria. So mitochondria are one of the membrane-bound organelles. So if the prokaryotes don't have membrane-bound organelles, then they're not going to have mitochondria because that's one of them. But the eukaryotes will. All of them except for some protists may not, okay? We'll talk more about protists later. Chloroplasts. Chloroplasts, again, are another membrane-bound organelle. Prokaryotes, neither one of them have membrane-bound organelles. So just like mitochondria, they will not have chloroplasts either. So not all eukaryotes, though, have chloroplasts. Remember, chloroplasts is where photosynthesis happens. So who does photosynthesis? Well, plants do photosynthesis, and animals do not. Fungi do not, but some protists do. So we're going to put some again for protists. And I just realized I spoke too soon. My mouth is moving faster than my brain. So some bacteria do photosynthesis. There are some bacteria that have chloroplasts and do photosynthesis. So I apologize for that. I was getting ahead of myself. Some bacteria do have that, okay? Ribosomes. So ribosomes are one of the things that, remember what a ribosome does, it makes proteins, right? And every cell type needs proteins. Proteins perform all the basic functions of cellular life. Without proteins, a cell would not be able to do anything. And so all cells, just like DNA, all cells have proteins as well. Because isn't DNA just information on how to make proteins? So if we have DNA, obviously proteins are being made. If proteins are going to be made, you have to have the things that make proteins, which are ribosomes. So if all cells have DNA, all cells are making proteins, all cells need the things to make proteins, which are ribosomes, okay? Performing photosynthesis, which ones do? Well, some bacteria, because some do have chloroplasts. Some will do photosynthesis. Archaea, bacteria, I believe some do, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just checking my list because there's a lot of boxes here, and I want to make sure I don't screw up. Yes. I used to think that no Archaea did photosynthesis. Turns out there is one. There is one kind of Archaea bacteria that does photosynthesis. And so I used to leave that blank, but now I put some because there is one type that does that. All plants do photosynthesis, of course. Animals, of course, do not. That's like us. We don't do photosynthesis. Neither do fungi. And some protists do photosynthesis. Autotrophs, that means you make your own food, or you make your own energy, I should say. You get energy from yourself. Autotrophic, some of these are. Well, you know what? All bacteria are, aren't they? No, some are. There are some flesh-eating bacteria, I guess, so that's why only some. Technically, I can't put all bacteria. Some bacteria are autotrophic. Some archaea bacteria are autotrophic. Most are, really. But we have to put some because there may be some that aren't, okay? Plants, there are, well, all plants are autotrophic. I apologize. Animals, not autotrophic. Fungi, not autotrophic. And some protists are, again. Now, protists are weird. We're going to talk about why protists have so many sums. Some do and some don't. We'll talk about that in a second. Heterotrophic. So, of course, if some are autotrophic, that means some are heterotrophic, right? Some of the bacteria are autos, some are heteros. Plants, they're not heterotrophic. Animals, though, are. Fungi are. And again, if some of the protists are autotrophic, some are heterotrophic. Oops, I wrote those in the wrong thing, didn't I? Okay. Multicellular. So no prokaryotes are multicellular. They're all unicellular. So eukarya, though, all plants are eukaryotic. All animals are eukaryotic. All fungi, I'm sorry, I'm saying eukaryotic, multicelled. But some protists are multicelled and some protists are unicelled. So I'm going to go ahead and put unicelled down here. Okay, so obviously you can't be multi and unicellular. So the bacteria, both prokaryotes are unicellular. All prokaryotes are single-celled organisms. And some of the protists are single-celled as well. Reproduction method. So I'm going to put an A for asexual and an S for sexual, or a B for both, okay? So you can either reproduce asexually, which means that it's just you by yourself. You don't need to have sex with another individual of your species to make a baby. It's asexual. The A in front means no or without, okay? So bacteria, they both reproduce asexually, okay? Plants, well, plants can be either, they can either reproduce asexually or sexually, okay? So some plants can reproduce by themselves. Some plants need to exchange genetic information with other plants. Animals, obviously, are sexual reproduction. Fungi are both. And protists are both as well. So some reproduce asexually and some reproduce sexually. Movement. Okay, so movement, are they mobile or non-mobile? M is for mobile, N is for non-mobile, okay? So movement, let's see. Bacteria, they are mobile, they can move around. Both of them can. Plants are non-mobile, right? You don't see plants walking around. Now, plants can turn and grow toward the light, but they're not necessarily, that's different from movement. Being able to move and being mobile are different. A plant can bend, but it can't change its location on Earth. Okay, it can't get up and move somewhere. It can kind of bend, but it can't move to a different location. That's the difference between being able to move and being mobile. Okay, animals are obviously mobile, right? Fungi, non-mobile, and protists, for the most part, they're all mobile. Okay. Okay, so now what I want to talk about is pro versus eu. We kind of already mentioned it. Pro versus eu. Pro means no. Eu means nuke. No nucleus, no organelles, no membrane-bound organelles. Eukaryotic, nucleus, and membrane-bound organelles. That's really the only two major differences between pro and euc you really need to remember. As far as archaea versus regular bacteria, there's things I want you to know the difference between those two. There's actually only one difference. If you'll notice, bacteria and archaea, if you go down the line, everything matches, okay, except for one thing. Okay, everything matches. Well, there's two things. I'm sorry. Everything matches except for the fact that some bacteria have chloroplasts and archaea bacteria do not. The other difference is that regular bacteria, their cell walls are made up of this, and archaea, their cell walls are made up of this. You don't need to remember what their cell walls are made up of. You just need to remember that their cell walls are made up of different stuff, okay? So this is the difference here. Cell wall is made up of different stuff, and the fact that some bacteria have chloroplasts, but no archaea bacteria do. And if I'm wrong about that, then I'll update this video, but I'm pretty sure that's correct, okay? Okay. So that's archaea versus bacteria, plants versus fungus. Let's talk about plants versus fungus, okay? So I want you to know the difference between plants and fungi is that their cell wall is made up of something different from the fungus cell wall, okay? So again, their cell wall is different. That's one thing. The other thing is that plants do photosynthesis and fungi do not do photosynthesis. And the last thing is how they eat, where they get their energy from. Plants are autotrophic and fungi are heterotrophic. So again, the three things different between plants and fungi: their cell walls are made up of different stuff. Plant cell walls are cellulose, fungi are chitin. Plants do photosynthesis, fungi do not. And plants are autotrophic, fungi are heterotrophic. Now let's look at the things that all cells have. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to circle in blue the things that all cells have. There are four things that all cells have. All cells have a cell membrane, right? Okay. All cells have DNA. You can see that here. Okay. All cells have cytoplasm. And all cells have ribosomes. Okay, so if you can remember this, keep this table that you filled out. Remember this. This will help you tremendously. And that should be everything that you need to know about the domains and the kingdoms and the differences between the cell types in those kingdoms.